Takara was a Japanese toy company that published 6 games for the Sega Genesis. The immortal John Hancock here with another ranking video. I've done several of these for the Sega Genesis. In today's video, I'm going to take a look at all 6 games that Takara published for the Sega Genesis and give them a ranking. If you are interested in doing your own ranking, the link will be below for that. You may have different opinions than me, and that's okay. We can still be friends. If you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe button and click the bell as I'm uploading videos every week. I use this point value to determine a ranking, and I look at several things. The big thing is a lot of these arcade conversions aren't going to be the same as their arcade counterpart. I look at what was available for the Sega Genesis, if it still captures the essence of that arcade conversion, and most of all, is it still fun? Let's get going and start with the first game, and that's Fatal Fury, the very first of them of the King of Fighters series. And so going back to this to me is just an average game. Unfortunately, it's fun to go back and revisit, you know, the origins of Terry, Andy, and Joe. And so you do have 9 playable characters in the versus mode in this. You can unlock the boss Geese, but in the story mode, there's just 3 characters. It is a rather slow fighting game. Now, if you're used to games such as like Street Fighter 2, you may be disappointed in this. Overall, I think it's just an average fighter when given the options of other Sega Genesis fighting games. You know, I'm a big fan of Terry Bogard. He's one of my favorite characters of the Neo Geo fighting series. But, you know, when compared to some other options out there, this is just a C. And so this game is okay. I think it's okay, especially if you're playing with somebody else. It does only support 3-button controller, and I just think it's a limited fighter. And so here's the Mega Drive version that I do have. Love that cover. Up next is Fatal Fury 2, and this is just a better game. It is a bigger game, and there's more playable characters. There's 12 characters and stages, and I just think it does a much better job and a more competitive fighter when compared to the other Genesis fighters out there. 6-button support. I just think this does a great job. It's got a cool thing with the stages where they change, and I really like that. There's a lot of great graphics. I think it does a good job taking a 100 meg game and shrinking it down to 24 megs. Pretty decent job too. And so it is a slower fighter, but I think that it's easy to pull off moves. Each character has unique abilities, and I think this is a fun one to play with friends. Overall, I think Fatal Fury 2 is often overlooked for a decent fighter for the Sega Genesis. And maybe you've just played Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2 and you're looking for something else. This is a decent one. Definitely, and I'm going to give it a solid B. Taking a break from the Neo Geo conversions, Takara decided to publish Joe and Mack, and this is a straight up no frills arcade port. Now this was on several different consoles and handhelds, but Joe and Mack for the Sega Genesis is one of the better arcade conversions. Now it's very different than the Super Nintendo version. The Super Nintendo one had longer levels, it had one less weapon, it had kind of an overworld, but I think the gameplay is better in the Sega Genesis version. Now the levels are fairly short because it is an arcade conversion. There's branching paths, there is multiple endings, and that 2-player support. So this is a decent platform arcade game. The boss battles can be very challenging, but overall, I think it's a decent version of this game. In fact, it's one of my favorite. It is short, and because of that, it's going to turn off some people. There's only 5 stages, but I'm going to give it a B because I like what I played. And overall, I think it's going to appeal to those people that like kind of a true arcade conversion. It's kind of neat to go back and see what the Sega Genesis was capable of, especially a lot of these smaller companies and some games maybe you've not heard of or gone back and played recently. All right, next up. Big disappointment here. I'm a huge kaiju fan of video games in which you're taking Japanese kind of monsters and duking it out. I'm a big King of the Monsters fan of the arcades, played it quite a bit back at Round Table Pizza. It was just a great arcade game. And so firing up and playing King of the Monsters on the Sega Genesis is a major disappointment. You know, other games that Takara did, they were able to take all the playable characters and even add some of their other games that they published. You know, other arcade conversions were able to essentially keep the essence of what made the arcade game great. This one was cut back quite a bit. You know, you already, in the arcade, you only have 6 playable characters, and now it goes down to 4 in the Sega Genesis version. There was 12 rounds in the arcade, and this one only has 8. I just think that it's just very restrictive, and it's not compatible with the 6-button controller. You have to use the 3-button controller on this. And, you know, for some people out there, maybe you like wrestling games. I like wrestling games too. This is just very limited compared to some of the other options out there. And so, unfortunately, this one doesn't do it for me. I don't think that it did a great job of bringing King of the Monsters to the Sega Genesis. With its limited character options and reduced levels, I'm going to give this a D. It just didn't do it for me. King of the Monsters 2 took a different approach, and instead of converting the arcade, they kind of changed the whole game into a 1-versus-1 fighting game. And so for some people out there, especially arcade purists, you're not going to like this. Overall, I think this game is okay. It goes back now. You can use a 6-button controller on this game. There is 9 characters and 9 levels. It's just straight up, though. That's it. There's no really extra bells and whistles. And so for people out there kind of wanting more, you're going to be kind of left wanting something more in this game. And so overall, did it do a good job of just making a fighting game? I think part of it is part wrestling, part fighting. I like the wrestling aspect of King of the Monsters. In this one, this kind of makes it more of a fighter, and I don't know what I think of that. I think King of the Monsters is better as kind of a wrestling style game. And so, you know, when they switched it to a fighting game, there's only 3 buttons of action. And so, I don't know, this one is okay to me. Overall, I would probably choose a fighter. At the end of the day, I'm going to choose a fighter over many other fighting games over this. And it's just average to me. I'm going to give it a C. All right. Next up is a big one. Now, if you haven't heard my story about how I got my Sega Genesis, I actually went to my dad with a magazine ad showing a Neo Geo. And he looked at me and he says, "Son, you know how you're going to get a Neo Geo?" And he pointed to the lawnmower and says, "That's how you're going to get it." Unfortunately, I wasn't able to save up the hundreds of dollars for the Neo Geo. However, I was able to purchase a Sega Genesis at the end of a summer, saving enough money to get the Alter Beast package for the Sega Genesis, and really enjoyed it. The Sega Genesis offered several different games and had a wide library, and it started my journey of loving everything Sega Genesis. Samurai Showdown was shown in a magazine, Electronic Gaming Monthly, I do believe, EGM. And so I drooled over the pictures, and I was wondering, is this going to be as good as the arcade port? Now, the Sega Genesis version of Samurai Showdown that finally came out, I was excited to play this home arcade port. I lived in the country. I wasn't near a lot of arcades. I had a few arcades, but Samurai Showdown to me is a very special fighter and one that's often overlooked. Some people compare it to Street Fighter. I think it's actually a better fighting game. It's one of my favorite 2D fighters of all time, and I played the arcade port quite a bit. Now, the home version and Sega Genesis port takes away some of the scaling, but it captures the essence that made the arcade great. All the moves, all the characters, all 12 characters you can play as a boss in the versus mode, the stages, all the little details of the game. The majority of those are represented here. Most of all, it's fun. I love playing this version of it. No, it's not a one-to-one arcade port. There are other arcade ports that are better. I'm looking at the 3DO version of this game. It's pretty excellent. But with the limitations of the Sega Genesis and with the other options, I still think this is one of the better fighting games. And at the end of the day, I'm going to give this an A. So that's all 6 games. That's pretty much how I have ranked them. Here are the rankings, and you can do this yourself with the link below. I've had a lot of fun with this. These 6 games are pretty decent. You know, overall, the Sega Genesis was filled with companies that produced games, both good and bad. What is the company you want me to do next? I would love to hear in the comments, as I love doing these ranking videos for the Sega Genesis. Thank you so much for the ongoing support. And if you're new to the channel, hit that like and subscribe button and click the bell as I'm uploading videos every week. You folks are wonderful and beautiful. Thank you for helping me get to 100,000 subs. You folks are wonderful and beautiful. This is the Immortal John Hancock, and you have a good day.